This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
We begin with a question. Did John McCain win the news cycle but lose the war? The Republican presidential nominee's choice of Sarah Palin, an outsider from Alaska, to be his vice presidential running mate made all the right headlines for a day or two. And it stole some of the thunder from Barack Obama and the Democrats. But then a hurricane threw a new name, Gustav, into the media mix, and reporters learned that Ms. Palin, the so-called hockey mom, was about to become a grandmother. Our starting point this week, the media circus preceding and then surrounding the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota. Political item number one for John McCain going into the Republican convention: change the media narrative.
A surprise pick by John McCain.
And news just in, Republican presidential hopeful John McCain has named Sarah Palin as his vice presidential candidate.
Less than 24 hours after Barack Obama's big speech, McCain had sucked the oxygen right out of that story.
She's exactly who I need. She's exactly who this country needs.
Did McCain step on Obama's convention bounce by naming Sarah Palin to his ticket?
Republicans hope you are saying Barack who this morning.
Republicans were calling it a McCain masterstroke.
This is like something out of a novel.
Announcing his running mate, Sarah Palin, and introducing a fresh new face to American voters, a new angle for the media.
As it is often with a McCain decision, it was that the Maverick is back. Which he was, frankly. It was a pretty bold and interesting and weird pick.
Then, just as journalists and bloggers were sinking their teeth into the Palin story, unearthing old video from her days as a young sports anchor,
Minnesota's got to be notorious for something, I guess.
The new Alaska angle was overtaken by news from the opposite end of the country.
Gustav, the storm already killing more than 50 people, and it is gaining strength and now zeroing in on the U.S. Gulf Coast.
The Republican National Convention was derailed by the hurricane.
Months of planning have had to be abandoned.
The Republicans, fearing a repeat of Hurricane Katrina and the Bush administration's disastrous handling of that disaster, put part of their convention on hold.
Their worst nightmare was the first night of the Republican convention, and you had a split screen. On one side you saw the Republicans, on the other side you saw the tragedy because of the hurricane. They went to great lengths to avoid that happening. Clearly that was a political calculation.
A calculation designed, again, to control the media narrative, which the Republicans quickly lost all over again, when it was announced that Sarah Palin's teenage daughter was 5 months pregnant.
John McCain's campaign dropped that bombshell as Hurricane Gustav dominated the news.
But is the media going to really hold her responsible for her 17-year-old juvenile daughter? It just seems like that's unfair and out of bounds.
The media is following this story when there's been an unwritten code that kids are off limits. Why is Sarah Palin's daughter not off limits?
Well, look, this is one of the last frontiers that we haven't violated until the last 48 hours.
With the media's investigations into Palin, their questioning of her qualifications moving into overdrive, CNN pressed a McCain spokesman on Palin's national security credentials.
Tell me give me an example of one of those decisions. I'm just curious, just one decision she made in her capacity as Commander-in-Chief of the National Guard.
Campbell, certainly you don't mean to belittle every experience, every judgment that she makes as commander of the National Guard.
I'm belittling nothing.
The campaign reacted by punishing CNN, canceling an interview John McCain had agreed to give the network.
He is declaring sort of war on the media and saying that they're going too far, that they're against me, that they're digging up private things about my wife and about my running mate's family, and it's completely unfair. So I think we're going to have a much more aggressive relationship over the next few months.
Some Washington pundits and media big shots are in a frenzy over the selection of a woman who is actually governed rather than just talk the good game on the Sunday talk shows and hit the Washington cocktail circuit.
McCain's running mate in her convention speech tried to turn the tables on the news media.
I've learned quickly these last few days that if you're not a member in good standing of the Washington elite, then some in the media consider a candidate unqualified for that reason alone. But here's a little news flash for those reporters and commentators. I'm not going to Washington to seek their good opinion. I'm going to Washington to serve the people of this great country.
John McCain and the U.S. media used to be on friendly terms. Journalists working in new media are taking credit for changing that through internet videos like The Real McCain, which examine McCain's shifting policies, his many contradictions, in a way few mainstream media outlets do.
Since he comes from a generation, a pre-YouTube generation, he's in the habit of saying one thing at one time and saying something else at another time.
I voted against the tax cuts.
You voted to extend them?
I voted to extend them. I voted against the tax cut. I've always been for tax cuts. We either keep our word or we don't keep our word.
That's the purpose of The Real McCain videos. That's why millions of people have seen them. And in concert with people around the country and around the world and good, hard-working journalists, I believe the love affair that has existed between McCain and the media is turning.
It's not just Western media following the story. The Canadian media research firm Influence Communications tallies and analyzes global news coverage. And since the start of the year, more than 750,000 broadcast stories on the U.S. campaign have aired outside the U.S.
The Arab media, like its counterpart in the United States, has been kind to John McCain. It jumped on the bandwagon of subjecting Barack Obama to all kinds of scrutiny. McCain, on the other hand, was given a pass. What's amazing, though, is the fact that most Arab journalists did not question his positions on Iraq, Afghanistan, or Palestine. In their opinion, he was cut from the same stone as George W. Bush. They knew Bush's position on the war in Iraq, and that was enough for them.
However, John McCain's Republicans are not that interested in what the global news media report. The Republicans are focused on the American media, and they're spoiling for a fight.
في تحول جذري للعلاقات بين ليبيا والولايات المتحدة تصل وزيرة الخارجية الأمريكية.
In a major shift in the U.S.-Libyan relationship, U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice arrived today in Tripoli as part of her tour to the Arab Maghreb region, where she will also visit Tunis, Algeria, and Morocco. Rice, who's the first U.S. senior official to visit Libya in 55 years, will meet with the Libyan leader, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, at the Ramadan breakfast table. Rice's visit indicates that the U.S.-Libyan relationship has entered a new historical stage. Seghir Salem reports.
More than a half-century ago, then U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles visited Libya. Then Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was not in power, and U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice was not born yet.
As Libyans, we have always said that our animosity towards the U.S. was not based on a fundamental belief. However, this anti-U.S. sentiment by the Libyan nation is merely due to the policies of the U.S. administration.
The strain on the relationship between the U.S. and Libya reached its peak in the mid-1980s with the bombing of the U.S. Pan Am flight over Lockerbie and the U.S. attack on Tripoli and Benghazi. Today, when Rice is welcomed by the Libyan leader, a new stage will begin for the relationship between Tripoli and Washington, which until recently has listed Libya as a nation supporting terrorism. The new relationship between Washington and Tripoli has completely ended a stage of conflict and feud between the two sides. Muammar Gaddafi said his regime's long estrangement from the United States was finally over as he marked his 39th anniversary in power, thus breaking the international siege imposed on Libya since the 1980s. Libya sees in Rice's visit an opportunity for Tripoli to return strong to the international arena. On the other hand, Washington hopes that Rice's visit to Libya will achieve an unprecedented diplomatic success for the Bush administration, and also hopes to show Iran and North Korea the benefits they may reap by abandoning their weapons of mass destruction.
بتخليهما عن أسلحتهما للدمار الشامل.
أعلن مسؤولون باكستانيون أن 3 أطفال وامرأتين قتلوا.
Pakistani officials announced that 3 children and 2 women were killed when 3 American missiles were dropped from drone planes on 2 homes in the village of Zerwat Baliabi in northern Waziristan along the borders with Afghanistan. The attack is the 3rd attack of its kind inside the Pakistani territories within 3 days.
The attacks generated angry reactions both at the political and civilian levels. Pakistani officials said that these attacks are violations of Pakistan's sovereignty. In addition, the attacks overshadow the presidential elections in Pakistan, scheduled to take place tomorrow, and affect the nature of Pakistan's relations with its American ally.
الحدث هنا ليس انتخابات الرئاسة الباكستانية. بعد قليل ينتهي القوم من إقامة.
In this village of Angur Ada, near the Afghan border, people are not preoccupied with Pakistani presidential elections. Shortly, the village residents will complete building graves, which will mark another American raid that killed at least 15 civilians, including women and children. These were the words of local officials. The attack, which took place Wednesday, was geographically closer to the Afghan border, and it has generated a large reaction in Islamabad, which is about to witness new presidential elections. The U.S.'s decision to carry out 3 military strikes in Pakistan since the former president Pervez Musharraf resigned in the middle of last month is not a coincidence. Since then, Pakistan has been like a body without a head. Meanwhile, American military intelligence has been preparing justifications for the importance of continuing this war, this time with partners that it can trust. Senior Pakistani officials have been talking about new strategies. 11,000 fighters are preparing to be deployed in eastern Afghanistan along the border with Pakistan to carry out a series of attacks during the coming winter. The Americans' rules of engagement allow U.S. forces to penetrate up to 10 kilometers inside the Pakistani territories and up to 15 kilometers of its airspace. Azib Zardari, the widower of the late leader of the Pakistan People's Party, Benazir Bhutto, did not let Washington down even before being elected to the presidential office as expected. Here he was writing for the Washington Post, saying that terrorism is the biggest threat facing his country, despite the angry reactions by the Pakistani people and media. Zardari lists the names of Western countries that have been subjected to terror, but he fails to mention the latest American attacks in Pakistan. Political analysts say that terrorism and extremism will remain the main challenge to the next Pakistani president, as long as it remains the main reason behind American foreign aid to Pakistan. This has transformed Pakistan into a battlefield of other people's wars under the pretext that Pakistan shares the same enemy with them. Angry protesters and the opposition, however, believe that Pakistan should be fighting its war, and that is the next challenge.
هو التحدي المقبل. كشفت صحيفة الزمان نقلا عن مصادر استخباراتية عراقية عن اجتماع استثنائي.
The Zaman newspaper cited Iraqi intelligence agencies in a report about a special meeting that was held by Iranian leaders to discuss the situation in Iraq after tensions rose between the ruling United Iraqi Alliance Party and the Kurds, as well as security tension in Khanaqin. The intelligence sources told the newspaper that strict directions and recommendations were issued during the meeting to Iraqi parties that have an allegiance to Iran to develop a quick, multi-level plan. More details in the following report.
أفادت مصادر استخبارية عراقية أن القيادة الإيرانية عقدت اجتماعا.
Iraqi intelligence sources revealed that the Iranian leadership held a special meeting pertaining to the situation in Iraq. The meeting was attended by representatives from the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, the leadership of the Ramadan military camp of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, as well as the head of the Al-Quds organization. According to Iraqi intelligence, which is reliable sources in Tehran, the meeting was held to discuss the deteriorating health of the Iraqi president Jalal Talabani after his recent heart surgery. Iranian officials exchanged a report pertaining to this issue, saying that there is a possibility that the surgery might prevent President Talabani from being able to return to work the way he was. According to the meeting record, which the Kurdish leadership in Iraq has a copy of, Tehran realized that Talabani's role in the political arena in Iraq will be weakened because of his illness. This means that Iran might lose one of its best allies outside the ruling United Iraqi Alliance Party. Intelligence sources revealed that the Iranian intelligence agencies issued specific orders to Iraqi parties that have an allegiance to Iran to develop a quick plan to undermine the Kurdish alliance and put pressure on it. Another objective of the plan was to humiliate the Kurdish party politically, like what happened to the Iraqi Accordance Front. The Iranian recommendation pertaining to this issue called for maintaining the plan inside the Iraqi government. Iran wants the Kurdish alliance to be weakened now so they can be easily pressured by the United Iraqi Alliance Party. According to the summary of the special meeting of the Iranian officials, the Kurds will not be able to bring the government down because they do not have a strong ally at the current time against al-Maliki. The paragraph pertaining to this issue was written in big fonts, also said that this is the best time to hit the Kurds and weaken them so they can be controlled by the United Iraqi Alliance Party. The intelligence sources said that the Iranian leadership also approved a plan to derail the negotiations with the Americans. Iran complained that a lot of information was changed by the Iraqi Foreign Ministry without consultation with the United Iraqi Alliance and the Iranian embassy in Baghdad. The Iranian leadership stressed the importance of not letting those who support establishing good relations with the U.S. control the negotiations. Iranian officials talked during the special meeting about changing the negotiations team by introducing elements that are closely associated with Iran to ensure the flow of information to Tehran. The third thing that was called for during the special Iranian intelligence meeting was to speed up the elimination of the Al-Sahwa Council leaders in northern and western Baghdad, Tikrit, Beji, Abu Ghraib, eastern Al-Hila, and the Diyala province along the Iranian border. Iran gave complete authority to the concerned parties in order to fulfill these orders by arresting or assassinating Al-Sahwa Council leaders through double agents. However, they called for keeping Al-Sahwa councils in Anbar temporarily and making sure not to integrate more than 1% of them into the Iraqi government in areas where the United Iraqi Alliance is weak. The intelligence sources which learned about other aspects of the latest Iranian meeting said that the Iranian officials believe that these measures are intended to strengthen the grip of the United Iraqi Alliance over Iraq at the political and security levels. This comes as the new Iraqi army became sectarian. More than 89% of it supports Al-Dawa branches, Al-Maliki, Al-Jafari, the Higher Council for the Islamic Council, and Badr organization. Only 11% of the army leadership is allocated to the rest of the Iraqi political and social parties, including the Kurds. The same sources added that the Iranian intelligence and military leaders made the fight for the Hanequeen a priority and demanded its allies in Baghdad to do so for two main reasons. First, Iranian intelligence elements want to infiltrate through the middle of the Iraqi borders, not only through the south. Iraq also wants to reach Al-Shat military camp to attack Mujahid Khalq at the right time. The Iranian leadership realized that the Kurdish forces control the Hanequeen along the Iranian borders, and they are constantly in coordination with the U.S., which derails Iran's intelligence plans in the middle of Iraq.
The Joy of Giving camp opens a door between Jabal Muhsin and Bab al-Tabbana.
There is another face to Jabal Muhsin and Bab al-Tabbana that the Lebanese people are not used to seeing. The sound of bombs and the echoing of gunshots penetrated the ears of childhood.
The scene was a disgrace for the culprits. Farah al-Ata, or the joy of giving, was the only place which closed the curtain on the game of those in power. It brought children from the two areas together to instill principles in them that they were deprived of, to plant the seeds for the good of future generations.
This is a continuation of the project started in 2002. Our volunteers from the Joy of Giving went and rebuilt the area that was destroyed by the war. Since 2002, the Joy of Giving has been working hard with the people in Tabbana.
I pray to God that the war goes away and we all go back to our homes. Those armed people should just quit it.
Enough war left in Lebanon.
We don't want the war. We want love, reconciliation, and respect.
Commitment and discipline make the children an example to go by.
We start our day by raising the flag, so the children know that all of us are for the nation. Then we have the salutations. Every group has a special call. Then we go to the rooms, and they fix their beds and things. Afterwards, we start various activities. All of us here in the colony gather together, the children and the adults. Every person prays in their own way.
Thank you to the Joy of Giving.
With their instinct and nature, the children of Jebel Musin and Bab al-Tabana have achieved what officials failed to do. They have transcended the sound of gunshots and gathered together. They know that the one Lebanon encompasses all its children. From the Joy of Giving Center in Kafan, this is Salma Al-Haj, New TV. The state of the people in Gaza did not change with the beginning of the blessed month of Ramadan. They still continue to suffer under the Israeli siege. More in the following report by Hiba Shihada from Gaza.
The breeze of the month of Ramadan is here. In the Gaza Strip, the day starts with the sound of the Musahirin's drums. They give this blessed month a unique flavor, in addition to waking people up. The youth call out in joy for the arrival of this month, and the sound of fireworks welcomes the month of Ramadan in fervor. Smiles are on the faces of many people welcoming the month of goodness. A quick tour in the markets of Gaza is enough to give a picture about Ramadan here. The merchants line up on either side of the roads. Here's the seller of Qatayef, the favorite dessert of Palestinians, and there are the sellers of Ramadan lanterns, which all children love, and many more.
Truthfully, the situation is not good. The passage points are closed, the workers are sitting, there is no money, and everyone has a family to feed. May God help each person in his difficulty.
People's buying activity is weak because they do not have any income.
A person may want to buy something. He looks at it and craves it, but he can't afford to buy it because the prices are too high.
The citizens in Gaza suffer several arduous situations. The most prominent is the Israeli siege, the shortage of merchandise and foods, and the high prices. This makes the citizens desist from buying many of their basic needs to save a little bit of money to ensure their needs until the end of the month.
There's no income, there's no work, and there's nothing to do. The prices are very high.
Religious sentiment is at its prime this month. The sound of recitation of the Holy Quran is heard from all the mosques as sunset approaches. The streets are almost empty as people retreat to their homes during this time in preparation for breaking the fast, then praying and doing good deeds, visiting relatives and close family members. The reality of the Palestinians has not changed, even in the month of Ramadan. But hope is still the master of the situation for the Palestinians, who wish that the breeze of comfort will blow over the whole world. Wishing you many happy returns, this is Hiba Shihada, Future TV, Gaza.
John McCain touted the success of the surge in Iraq at the Republican National Convention. Has the war in Iraq been won? And what's the meaning of the USA chants by the delegates on the convention floor? Answers to these questions and more on Link TV's Mosaic Intelligence Report.
Patriotism and country first have become the theme for John McCain's campaign. Several speakers, including the Republican nominee himself, John McCain, touted the success of the surge in Iraq at the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota.
That strategy succeeded, and it rescued us from a defeat that would have demoralized our military, risked a wider war, and threatened the security of all Americans.
Amidst chants of USA, USA, the Iraqi people's suffering was forgotten. In the party-like atmosphere, no one seemed to care about a bad economy or a wasted $1 trillion either. The most unpopular president in American history was even kept at bay by divine intervention, a hurricane. Here is a reality check. Quelling some violence in Iraq does not mean that the war has been won. The surge is working, but that's because the Iraqis themselves want it to work. Does anyone recall the Anbar awakening? The war in Iraq is far from over. A sectarian war is looming in the north of the country between Kurds, Turkomans, and Arabs, both Sunni and Shiites, over the oil-rich area of Kirkuk. Militant Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr is biding his time waiting for the right moment and is currently kept under control only by direct orders from spiritual leader Ayatollah Sistani. However, it will not be long before he decides to take up arms against Maliki's regime that many Iraqis view as an American puppet. There is something else no one talked about during the Republican National Convention. Millions of Iraqi families remain homeless. Iraqi children have been forced into labor to help their devastated families. And many young Iraqi refugee girls have turned to prostitution in countries like Syria and Jordan. This is all because George W. Bush and his supporters decided to fight Al-Qaeda in Iraq and not in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Another reality check. There was no need for a surge had the Bush administration listened to military experts who encouraged Bush, Dick Cheney, and Donald Rumsfeld to start with more troops to begin with and not to disband Saddam's army. The insurgency that the US and Iraqi government is fighting today is made up mostly of ex-Saddam army members and a relatively small number of foreign fighters. Meanwhile, army officials have recently revealed that the suicide rate among US soldiers could surpass last year's record and urged military leaders to increase prevention efforts. There were 62 confirmed suicides among active duty soldiers and army reserves called to active duty this year, while another 31 deaths that appear to be suicides are being investigated. 115 members of the armed forces committed suicide last year. When a veteran of the war in Iraq tried to express his objection to the war during McCain's speech on Thursday night, he was rustled outside the convention hall. USA, USA, they kept on chanting. I'm Jamal Dajani for the Mosaic Intelligence Report. To learn more about this program or to share your thoughts, visit us at linktv.org/mosaic.
Hi, I'm Wendy Hanamura. 9 years ago, a group of visionary television producers had an idea. What if you had your own network dedicated to the best news, culture, music, and feature films from around the world? That dream is Link TV. And if you're one of the dreamers who believe in this vision, guess what? You're not alone. 6 million regular viewers share your passion for Link, believing that media can make a difference in this world, that we can leave a better planet for our children. And it's you who funds this powerful network and our flagship show, Mosaic. That's right, 88% of Mosaic's budget comes from support by viewers like you. We need to raise $200,000 in the next few months to keep this program on the air through the end of 2008. With your support, I know we can do it. I'm asking you to call us right now at 1-866-485-8848 or go to linktv.org. Where will your money go? To keeping perspective, context, and 30 different sources of Middle Eastern news coming to you every day, online, on air. You can even subscribe and get the daily podcast. So won't you support this valuable resource in your life, something many of you say you couldn't live without? Thank you.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.